Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Adversity Stars podcast. How my loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. And remember, click that subscribe button, everybody. It's an amazing episode because Michael Berryman boards the mothership. You know him from The Hills Have Eyes and various appearances in the Star Trek franchise. Come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Berryman. Thank you so much for coming to the Adversity Stars podcast.
Well, it's great to spend the morning with you.
It's an honor to speak with you, sir. You're actually fantastic.
Oh, that's all? Thank you for that.
No problem. So I always start with a question of inspiration. So what inspired your love of acting and who your earliest influences?
Well, interesting question. Well, I grew up, of course, watching everything on Star Trek. I grew up, we had family friends that were Disney studio players. Tony Caruso, who was actually when Kirk and the gang went down to the planet where people were getting the television feed from our gangster movies, and he was the one with the mole on his cheek, the Italian fellow that goes, "Hey, I like those fancy heaters you got." That was Tony Caruso. And then, of course, we were friends with Red Skelton's family. Richard was in my grammar school class. So we would always watch the Red Skelton show, which is terrific. And we had some neighbors that were writers for, let's see, the Addams Family and some of the other earlier sitcoms. So, and I've always appreciated film. I read a lot of novels when I was younger, and I like a good story where it takes you somewhere. You go on a journey, and it's got a lot of texture. So as far as acting, in my memoir, I mentioned that, here it is right here.
Very cool.
It's all good. It's available on Amazon and for Kindle download also. So I think acting, it came about because I bumped into George Pal. And in my memoir, I mentioned how that all came about. It was never something that I had planned to do. I had a good friend in high school, and we went to college together. He played a very good guitar, Martin guitar, acoustic. We were like Simon and Garfunkel, so to speak. We had a lot of fun with it. We weren't going to make a career out of it. And I was out and about, went to a lot of different locations after college. I didn't have my full degree. There's reasons why I explain in my book. And serendipitously, I wound up in Venice Beach after some projects I was working on up north, and I met George Powell, and that's how I got started. I really wanted to homestead in Alaska, but he when and where I met him is in my book. It was in Venice, California, and I worked one day for George and had a SAG card and a couple $100, and figured, well, that was a pretty quick career. But something happened after that. I got a phone call from George's casting director, who was working on a Cuckoo's Nest. So that's how that got started. But as far as acting, I never really wanted the attention. Being a child with visual differences, birth defects, etc., and you can't hide, so to speak. So as far as being in front of the world's eyes, so I just didn't have any interest in that. But sometimes you got to go with the flow. It was an opportunity to take care of myself, make a living. So, and then of course I've met some wonderful people in the last 40 years in the industry, and so I'm very grateful for George for opening that door, even though it was unexpected.
Well, for the listeners, if you check the show notes, you'll find a link to your book. We'll put it in the show notes for everybody. So please click on it and and give it a read. And you've been in.
Thank you very much.
Oh no, totally my pleasure. It's saying I'll get to speak with you. I'll more than happy to put the link in the show notes and say. But you've been in a lot of classic movies. You've been in The Hill Has Eyes. As you said, Once Flew the Cuckoo's Nest, Star Trek 4. So what separates these great classic films from lesser films? Like, are you, having been in so many, can you tell which projects are going to be the classic ones?
Well, it's not very often that you know from the beginning of production that the film is going to go in any particular direction. If it's a larger studio film like Star Trek 4 and um, Next Generation, well, you know that's going to get
Mm,
coverage and it has a viewing audience. It's kind of a historical fact. Um, when I did Cuckoo's Nest, of course, we knew we had star power, we had Jack, and um, it was going to, it was going to get a full release.
mm,
Hills Have Eyes, we had no clue. I was stayed in touch with Peter and Wes Craven, forever. I'm still in touch with Peter Locke, but we didn't we just went out to the desert and we shot this film and it got some traction. We went around the country and did some screenings, even at drive-ins. They had me dress up like Pluto and run around and bang on car windows and stuff. It wasn't always the smartest thing to do, but I was young. Okay, boss, my producer, my director. Yeah, Wes, what do you want me to do? Oh, yeah, I can do that. And yeah, there's a few situations where maybe that wasn't the best idea, but the film struck a nerve, and that was one of the elements that I got to discuss in many interviews later on, especially with critics, and they would say, well, we had one, and this we were doing a panel, and this one lady said, "Well, aren't you concerned that when you do foul deeds, that somebody's going to go, ooh, I think I'll do that," and then you're helping create
mm.
an opportunity for someone to engage in violence? And I go, no, not at all. Um, in any scary film, horror film, for instance, a lot of the subject material is it's not it's veiled information. And what I mean by that is, um, if the bad guy is really bad, that means that the hero has to rise to the occasion to equal that challenge.
Mm.
That's what makes it heroic, because a lot of times they put themselves and people close to them at risk. So if you have a sugar coated bad guy, there's not much of the hero's not going to get a medal, so to speak. You have to get to the point where all hope is lost, and the dark night of the soul is a um, something that people talk about in writing. Um, so we didn't know Hills was going to do much, but like I said, it got traction, and I got to be on the cover for all the ad work, and that didn't hurt. As a matter of fact, last night I was watching New Rules with Bill Maher, and I couldn't dig it up again today. I was looking at all through um, the various postings, and he was talking about the woke generation, et cetera. And he says,
Yeah.
it's almost like being out in the hills have eyes. And he held up the poster. I was shocked. Um, but for me, I like to do a good job. I like to be prepared. And during Cuckoo's Nest, I learned about camera placing, uh, things you have to be aware of, how you look at the camera or not. There's a lot of little uh, special tools that you learn, and the people that have been around a lot will help you if you're willing to listen. I'm not one that has to run away to their trailer every 15 minutes or anything like that. No, it's a long day, and the crew work longer than the actors. So um, I don't have a lot of patience for actors that are special.
Right.
We're all professionals. We do our job, and we do the best we can. So everybody has a good scene, so to speak.
I think that's fantastic what you said about horror movies, because I think there's always that fear that people are like, the TV is going to corrupt and the movies will corrupt. But I think they're perfectly cathartic. There's something about watching a movie, the horror movie, and the scares and experiencing it that I think, and I don't think an audience or the audience of the horror movies, they tend to be some of the nicest people I've ever met too. I don't think there's ever been a connection there.
Well, I would agree. I was at a show years ago, and there were other people at the hotel, and people were walking into the hotel to go to the auditorium, and a lot of them were in costume, and there was some people there wondering who were just other hotel guests. They go, well, what's going on? And I said, well, here, come follow me and take a look around. And they realized that, hey, this is kind of fun. As a matter of fact, the lady's husband actually saw a vendor that had comic books, and he goes, "Oh wow, maybe I can get the comic books my mom threw away when I went to college." My mother did that to me, and I could have retired on their resale later because they were very valuable. And what I tell people a lot of times is I refer to the movie Matinee it has John Goodman in it, and it's a Joe Dante film. Joe's a great director, and it's based on the fear of nuclear annihilation because the girl gets in trouble because they're doing a duck and cover under your desk for an air raid drill. And if you know anything about science, and she's saying it won't protect you, blah, blah, blah. Well, it was cathartic and it was honest. And a lot of times these films, and especially science fiction, are cautionary tales. I love the short stories by, I'm trying to think. Well, one of my favorites is The Machine Stops. I want to say Edgar Rice Burroughs. I'm not sure if that's correct, but The Machine Stops is a wonderful short story with that type of Rod Serling, wink, wink, and a nod, and it's a little bit of irony because it helps wake you up, and you go, oh, wow, now I get it. It's more than just entertainment, So the image, for instance, the first time I saw Planet Earth, I appreciated it on the Whole Earth catalog from the 60s, because on the front and back was the two sides of Planet Earth. But one of the photographs that really struck home for me was the picture of this beautiful blue orb out in the vastness of space. And even Gene, well, I talked to Major quite a few times, but to take the audience away from where they are, and then you can reintroduce them to home, so to speak, is a wonderful gift that these writers in science fiction and even in horror will convey to the viewer. It helps you appreciate what we have, and when you go into the theater, where you park the car, you stop, you're not thinking about that, the bills that need to be paid, you're not thinking about that. You enjoy and you become part of the texture of the story. And then you add the lighting and sets and all the other accoutrements. I remember talking to George Takei one day about how in the beginning, the studio didn't think Star Trek would do much. And, so, I mean, the budget and props, etc., were limited, but they did a pretty good job. They convinced me that they were really there and doing things, and so tell a good story.
Yeah, I will say, me and my wife has just started rewatching the original Star Trek series, and it's amazing just how entertaining it is. You totally forget about the effect, that special effects are not what they are nowadays. You kind of forget about all that, and you just get involved into the story, and they still hold up. The stories still hold up for the most part.
They do. They do. They're well written, and the characters have very good development. They're really rounded out.
So
you can guess what they're going to do in a certain situation, which is a lot of fun.
Right. So you appear in Star Trek 4, which is, it's on many opinions the best of the Star Trek movies. So how did you get involved with Star Trek?
Well, I had an agent, and I had a meeting at Paramount, and it was for Star Trek 4, and Leonard was there, and long story short, they said the shape of your head and everything's just about right. If you put a little bit of makeup prosthetics on you, you could look like an alien. I guess they had seen Cuckoo's Nest and Hills, and we got along well. And they said, "Okay, you're going to be Captain Ricks." So when I was getting the makeup done up, which is delightful, and we came up with the split down the head like that, kind of mottled blue and gray. And we were kicking around, the director and I later, we were kicking around the idea of, well, this is a next gen. What do we call these guys? And so we started just articulating funny words. And I said, I actually came up with Bularian. And they go, yeah, we'll use that. And they did. I wore that makeup home one day on the freeway and passed a cop, and he just turned his head and says, just get out of here. But ironically, when I did Cuckoo's Nest, I had 127 days where every morning I had a conversation with Fred Phillips, the original Spock's ears guy. Fred was like my mentor. Every morning he would talk about the industry and talk about Star Trek and talk about his art. And he wouldn't stay at hotels. He would take his Cadillac and bring his trailer from Topanga Canyon where he lived. And then when his wife would come up, they would be spending time together. He'd been in the biz a long time, but the stories are remarkable. I would say the only other show that The Outer Limits was great. And then of course, everything that Rod Serling did was also a lot of humanity in these stories. They're just not frivolous like a lot of the films today are mostly special effects, and they're they're not even a roller coaster. They're just like a lot of flash and fluff and a couple stars that create box office, and they're making millions. And there's a lot of other people that work on a film, and they're not making millions, and they work really, really hard. I love my union, the industry, and
So, what was Leonard Nimoy like as a director? Because everyone knows him as Spock, but not everyone knows him as a director.
well, he was very organized. I mean, he knew exactly what he wanted. Easygoing. He just came up to me and when I had the final wardrobe and makeup finished, he liked it. It had a great look. I found him friendly, competent, thorough. He listened well. He would move from one setup to the next quite easily. The crew had been working with him for a long time, so it was a well-oiled machine. Yeah, I enjoyed his frankness and the energy that he put out, because not only was he directing, he was also starring in the film. But he was wonderful.
So, when you're playing Rix in Star Trek 4, obviously you said you helped develop the name of the alien species. Did you guys create like a backstory for the character?
Well, that was actually Next Gen,
Okay.
Valerian. That was Next
Oh,
Generation.
I'm sorry. I meant the Star Trek 4 character. Sorry.
In Star Trek 4, I don't think we had a definitive name for where my character came from. He had the big bulbous head and all
Right.
that. But I will say this about Paramount. They tailor those suits to fit you perfectly. You look really good at them. I mean, of course, we were on the studio lot where they have their wardrobe department and the people that make millinery do hats and tailor. They're all custom to fit. It's kind of nice. It's kind of nice that when they have a budget.
Mm. When you're playing a character that's not given a lot of backstory, like I said, like some of the ones like Star Trek 4, are you developing them yourself? Are you thinking about in your mind like who this character would be?
Yeah, so I didn't have any dialogue per se. I think it might have been. Oh yeah, I'm giving the weather report. When I'm having appliances glued and fitted, it's a very touchy. There's a lot of tactileness, I'll say, and texture, and it's almost like a meditation. It's almost like it helps put me in the zone. You have your wardrobe on, you're getting your makeup, your final touches, and it's a transformation, space and time for me anyway. And most other actors I talk to, it's the same way. You start to absorb the character. okay, he's from somewhere outer space, and he's been traveling forever, on this ship with the Federation. So because I was at the console, what I try to focus on is when you have levers and buttons and things, and you have to kind of move your fingers and move this and touch that, like you actually know what you're doing. So that gets me in the zone. It's always nice to have some rehearsal time, but it's also nice to be able to have time to rehearse with your props.
Mm.
So I was very impressed with the attention to detail on the set for the ship. It was quite beautiful. I will say this though, when they say get him back, get him back, and the glass blows in. That was sugar glass, about, I don't know, maybe half an inch thick, whatever. Well, they they fracture it, and then they have an air cannon that blows the parts across the camera, so you can see it. And when the glass broke, the pane of sugar glass is shattered, and it's moving like, on my peripheral vision, I can see like two lines, like a panel just going like this, and it went past my head. And when they yelled cut, they printed that particular take. But I noticed that, I mean, the air cannon was pretty pumped up. I had chunks of sugar pane glass, well, sugar, embedded in the back of my latex head.
Oh man! Oh my god!
Yeah, but we got it in one take. We didn't have to redo it. I was, yeah, I was impressed. And I also got to wear contact lenses of they're kind of greenish blue.
Mm. So I think the great thing about being a part of Star Trek is that once you're in Star Trek, you join this huge family of fans and actors, everything else. What has it been like being part of the Star Trek family?
Well, it's number one. It's an honor, and um, I just I just have a very strong affinity to people that have an open mind, and uh, they seem to appreciate what I call humanity rising, because all of the stories are based on an uplifting experience, uh, and that kind of makes it family. Uh, I'm always very impressed with the knowledge of almost every episode that the fans at the conventions have,
Mm.
and it's I don't know. I just think that to create a universe or a space where that many people spend that many hours of their life appreciating something. It's one of my
Mm.
favorite words, the A word, appreciate. So when when I see people at conventions and they're dressed in Trek outfits, for instance, and the same at a horror convention, people are dressed as uh, various types of characters, sinister and scary on the horror side, but in the Star Trek side of it, people spend a lot of effort to uh, have their outfits, their uniforms, and what have you, as accurate as possible, and they take a lot of pride in it.
Mm.
And there's people that will, they're dressed like Borgs, and they're in character all weekend, and it's fun. I mean, you're in a hotel, and you're going in and out of the convention room, and these people are. You can see the twinkle in their eye. They're really enjoying it. They basically stay in character all weekend. Um, it's fun. It would be nice if some of the things that we could do on the show were actually available in real life.
Indeed. Especially the teleporter make the commute much easier to work.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice.
I mean, it must be a great feeling to know that you're part of this universe and you've had opportunity to give that level of enjoyment to such a large fan base. And like I said, I imagine you're embraced by them. Even though, like I said, you were in basically two movies and the episode, and you're must be fun to be embraced by the fans like that.
It is, and for me personally, being I mean, I had very good friends, which I still know today. They're still with us. But when you have a difference, uh, if you look different, if you're just a little off, it's not a judgment call, but it's the acceptance within the genre, within that
Mm,
community. Now, I've seen people that walk with the gimp. I've seen people that just um, don't look like everybody else. I'll just put
mm,
it straightforward. And yet they're they're in this role, and nobody judges them. Nobody goes up to them and says, "Oh, well, it should be this. You should be doing this, that, or the other thing." There's acceptance,
mm,
and to me, again, that's the H factor, humanity, um, and they're comfortable in their own skin. Where on their day-to-day life, it could be a lot different.
mm,
So that to me is the essence of the quote family, the acceptance, the larger neighborhood. It's a global event. I mean, if there was a situation where somebody put the word out, here, you're going to call 911, call every Trekkie on the planet, they would respond. So it is an extended family, which I find terrific.
mm. And and I was doing some research on you and your history movies. And what I didn't realize is that you're actually appeared or had a deleted scene in another one of my favorite movies of all time, The Crow. You played the Cowboy in the deleted scene, which I think not a lot of people know about. So, what was the role of the Skull Cowboy, and what was it like working with Brandon Lee?
Well, I would have to put a big thank you out to James O'Barr, who of course lived
Mm,
through a tragedy and then out of therapy. He wrote the Crow series. I was very very honored to be a part of the Crow. I spent a lot of time with Brandon when we were rehearsing various scenes. The Skull Cowboy, of course, was a someone who had been murdered with his beloved, and then he had a chance to come back and do balance the retribution, so to speak. But he also had humanity in his heart, where he saw the people in need. So he stayed and he helped other people. But the rule was there were scenes where I'm having a conversation with Brandon, and I tell him, kill the ones that killed you both. If you go beyond that point, you will not be reunited with your beloved. So why does the hero jeopardize their own situation when they could just do, you know, get the bad guys? Why would they, risk the chance of not being reunited? Well, it speaks for their spirit. It speaks about their ethics. And I found that there was a special there was a special ambiance on the set of The Crow.
mm.
And Rochelle Davis, who what was her character's name?
Is it Sarah?
Sarah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Oh, still in touch with her today. Sarah Monster, they called her. She could ride the skateboard very well. Tony Todd, of course, is in it. Everybody wanted to see the film completed the way that James had created it, and it was just devastating when we had the quote accident on the set. Um, I'll just be honest. I've been around firearms my whole life, and when a, a lot of people Well, when I got a call from my producer and director about what happened, I was supposed to fly out the next day, and Brandon and I were going to do 2 weeks of just the three confrontations with Eric Draven and Skull Cowboy. And of course, I got the news, and I started to get phone calls from paparazzi and stuff. And I go, well, how do you even have my phone number? So I wouldn't talk to them. One guy called up. He said, "Did you kill Brandon? There's three Michaels on the set, and you're Michael." And long story short, here's what, in my opinion, what happened. Because it's so important when if you're on a set and there's firearms, they're not toys. You work with your armorer and you do everything by the numbers. So they had the revolver and the cameras looking at the cylinders, and you could see the bullet tips. Okay, those were just casings, no powder, no primer, just filled with like a plastic or some kind of filler. And then they cut the tip of the bullets off and just glued them to these phony shell casings, so you could see them on a close-up where you're looking at the revolver. Now it was at night, and they eject those, and then they put in the full charge blanks, which have nothing going beyond. This is the brass. There's no bullet tip. It's just flat. This is just a wad to hold the powder in there. Well, when they went to eject the previous ones, you're supposed to take a flashlight. If you have a revolver, you have 6 holes, and you have a 7th hole, which is the barrel. So you should scope every one of those. Didn't do that. And we had an armorer from Los Angeles who was, I'll say union, and I know he was a pro, and he was expensive. Well, but you can't, put a cost on safety. Now in North Carolina, it's a right to work state. So in other words, after so many weeks, the production company can hire a local person. So in essence, so a local person can have a job. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but when you're dealing with firearms, I'm sorry, you have to have competence. And he missed it. So they sent home our guy and hired a local guy who's doing okay until that incident. And when Michael Massey was handed the gun, he didn't know that there was that bullet tip came unglued. It was just sitting in a cylinder. So when they put the full charge blanks in, it didn't push it out or move it. It was all snugged up. Now you have a very dangerous situation. Whenever I'm handed a weapon, even though they say it's inside, I've done A, B, and C, I go, show me. I don't play games. And so also when you go to point a gun at somebody in a scene, you don't point it at them. You aim to one side or the other, then you can move the camera to make it look like it's in direct line. So that was 3 mistakes right there, and cost our friend his life. Because I've gotten a lot of inquiries from people going, "Oh, the curse of the crow, the curse of the Lee family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And I said, please stop talking. So I'm a real stickler when it comes to being on a set with weapons. I was doing a Western, and a guy's tells me to turn around real slow. I'm one of the bad guys, and he shoots me. Well, we had checked the gun, of course, it had blanks, and he actually pointed it right at my face, and I could feel the percussion from the air blast, and then I could feel the granules of black powder going into the white of my eye. And I yelled, "Cut," and the guy goes, I didn't aim it at you, man. And I was not pleased at that moment. And I just called out to one of the transportation guys. I said, called him by name. I said, "Tommy, I'm in your car now, emergency room. Let's go." And well, but first I called out to the electricians call each other brothers, They're real tight. They work in sync. And I just called out and said, brothers, grab me now, because I was going for the guy. I was going to take him out. Because his attitude was, oh, I didn't point at this. Excuse me. No, I didn't sue. Everything was okay. But dadgummit, you don't do that. You got to do it by the rules.
Right.
No, yeah. So, yeah, I like professional behaviors.
Yes.
The way to do it.
So you were saying that after the point on which Brendan Lee had died, you were supposed to have shot a couple more scenes with the Skull Cowboy. What were the basis of those scenes? Like, where were they going to be? And were they ever shot?
Thank you. Yes, we had done some of them without for lighting. If you get the double disc Crow DVD, the second disc has a lot of extra footage. One and in the book by Kitchen Sink Press publication, The Making of the Crow, there's a whole chapter. It's called On the Cutting Room Floor. And it's just a couple pages dedicated to the Skull Cowboy character and what was supposed to happen. And the DVD extra footage, you can see some of the lighting tests where I'm pretending to disintegrate. I'm having conversations with Brandon, and we have there's the footage we did not get a chance to film was the 3 confrontations when Eric Draven is confronted by the Skull Cowboy, and he reminds them, you got to follow these rules. And then at the end, the 3rd time, then I say, it's ironic to say this, but I tell him that the blood will not go back in. If you get shot after this 3rd time, when you do your vengeance and then you leave, and he says, "I'm already dead." The irony and the weight of the heaviness of that reality was very, 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 very difficult for everyone. I kept in touch with a lot of my Crow friends, and we, I would say it took most of us about a year to kind of get back to center. Brandon had a very special gift. He was, the first night I was on set, he had a motorhome, and we introduced each other. And he says, "Well, come on into my." And I went into his motorhome. We went over lines. We chit chatted. We talked about our parents. As a matter of fact, my father was a very well-known neurologist and brain surgeon, and he actually. I remember one day at his office at home, he was reading a report about, Bruce and what neurologically had happened. How he passed. We shared a lot. We spent a lot of time together. And that first night, he took out his guitar and he played a song. And I said, "Well, do you know this other song?" And he goes, "Yeah." So we played that and sang together. And then he put on a cassette tape of what he'd been working on. And then we talked about the story and how special this all meant to us. And we were very, very intense about making sure that those scenes were just as powerful as we could make them. Now, when I summoned him out of the grave, and he goes, "Who are you?" And I'm there with the Crow, and it was very cold. It was always cold and muddy, and everybody's wearing jackets, and they had blankets. They call them furniture pads. Well, we're doing our scenes. Brandon's wearing just a very sheer bodysuit and barefoot, and I'm wearing my bones are just rubber latex, and they're glued to a bodysuit that I'm wearing, and at least I had some cowboy boots on. But I'll tell you what. And we film almost always at night, and we would be lined up to do a scene, and we would be just shaking and trembling from the cold. And they'd go, "I'm so sorry," and they'd take our blankets away, and then we would do a scene, and then they would rush up to Brandon and I and wrap us in the blankets they were holding over these little propane little furnaces. So it was it was physically challenging, but the message that James Labar was trying to share and the importance of the characters and how they interacted was what we were all shooting for.
So how would have the inclusion of the Skull Cowboy changed the feel of the film? Like, do you think it would have altered the how people approached it or felt about it?
I uh, I don't think it would alter how they felt about it. It would just make well, it would have made more sense, you know. I mean, for the Skull Cowboy to be in the story, he's explaining how he had made his decision. He was forever lost in the netherworld, and so another kindred soul, being Eric Draven, Skull Cowboy, is there for a reason. He arrives. My character arrives with the Crow to help this man be reunited with his beloved. And it's a cautionary tale I'm telling him, because he winds up doing what I did, you know. So it would have fleshed it out a little more as far as having the other character, and you would have the parallel experiences, and you know, and it would have created a little more drama, a little more tension, because you as the viewer is wondering if you're going to if Brandon's character is going to follow his own decision or take the advice of the Skull Cowboy.
So
So I think that builds the it sets the mark or the bar for the challenge that the hero has to address, and then in the long term make a decision.
So I think the impression is at the end of The Crow, the Brandon Lee's character Eric Draven does reunite with his loved one. If the Skull Cowboy had been in there, would the assumption have been that he wouldn't have been reunited with his loved one?
No, because the way the story was written is the third time I tried to convince him to follow the rules of engagement, so to speak. He refuses. He's made his choice. So that's when I tell him, then choose and be damned. And then I turn to like a cyclonic scene where I disintegrate, and the Crow leaves with me. And now Eric Draven is going back to deal with the gang of bad guys. And then when he's on the rooftop, of course, what happens? The Crow shows up at the last minute and gouges the guy's eyes out. Well, why did the Crow come back? See, left with the Skull Cowboy. Well, the Crow is basically a spirit guide, and I would say has a spiritual and emotional attachment to this person, and is again not taking away his ability to make a decision. He's going to make his own choice, and I think my character, the Skull Cowboy, I think he leaves out of frustration. He's done everything he can to help this young man not have an eternity of pain and sorrow that my character is dealing with. So that's why the Skull Cowboy arrives in the first place.
So once again, having been in a lot of great films, great horror films. So for you, what is the key to playing a great horror villain? And how far do you lean to the stranger aspects of a film and character that is like in a horror film or sci-fi?
When I'm playing a heavy or someone who doesn't behave like I do on a day-to-day basis, I'd like to look at the number one, the strengths and weaknesses of the person that I'm confronting. And I like to take advantage of their not their well of their frailty in certain areas and really push those buttons, um, so they have something again to rise up to. Uh, it is acting, so I just I put on the skin of that particular character.
Mm.
There's always some description, or like if there's a backstory, or we make up a backstory between me and the writer, especially the director. Uh, it's like uh, well, when you're developing a character, the shape of the character, let's say, is a picture or a vase. And as I get information about the character, a lot of that has to do maybe if it's a period piece, if it's a futuristic piece, a sci-fi, or if it's horror. A lot of times, it's kind of a wide open arena for your imagination. So I buy into all of that.
Mm.
I try to adjust my voice, my timing, my body movements, even small little gestures, especially when you're on a tighter lens. There are certain times I've talked to other actors that maybe were newer, starting out, and I go, you don't need to do you don't need to do all of this strenuous stuff right now because this is not a key shot for you. The focus in this particular take is these people over here. But when it comes time to your close up, or when you're really going to be, not cut out of the scene, so to speak, those are the moments when you want to really let it happen. I also recommend to actors to, because it is a visual um, skill set, get a camera, get used to studying your face in the mirror. It's one of the first things I tell people to do. And one of the first things that I would do is stand in front of a mirror and look at the face. Yeah, you know it's you. Okay, put that aside, and then just drain every thought and emotion. Let everything go away, and have your mind kind of like be a blank sheet. And then relax all the muscles in your face. And then what I do is I'll think of something happy, sad, or anything in between. And without moving my face or making a gesture, because it's a tight close up, the lens sees everything. So I let the emotion rise up from within, and you will see the difference. It's like, oh, I'm scared. Oh, I'm sad. It's not even that stark. It's subtle, but it's from within. And that's what I think Bruce Lee meant when he says emotional content, because that is what gives you the believability when you say your lines, when you have that presence. And in Star Trek, all of the standard players there, Jimmy, everybody, they had a presence. They just couldn't be replaced by somebody else because I'm an actor. Okay, you no, there's a presence that they uh, facilitate. They facilitate a presence that they own, and that's how we create our characters. I know some actors, like depending on the scenes, if they're easy and not a lot of depth, but if they're a deeper emotional um, context to the character in the scenes, I don't do a lot of chit chatting between takes. I pretty much stay in character. Some roles, it's almost required. Other roles are more laid back, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or something like that, or Scooby Doo. And you also want to make sure that when you're delivering lines for somebody else's close up, for instance, it's really a good thing. And what we're expected to do is to give 100, give it everything you got, even though it's not, because we're working together, we're all a team. So those are some things that I like to tell people to keep in mind. So you just make it real. You have to believe that this is really happening. Star Trek, we have things where, the trigger won't pull. This doesn't do that. Well, then believe it does. Convince me that it does. Show me
Right.
that it does.
Well, what's next for you, Mr. Berryman?
Well, what's next for me? Well, I hope a sunny day. We're in Michigan. It's chilly. What's happening now is I self-published my memoir. It's in my own words. I wrote it. I wrote it myself. That's my father and my sister and me, and it's available on Amazon. You can do a Kindle download. We're just kind of breaking ground here, but I'm very proud of it. The people, I'm on TikTok. I've got my Facebook page and the website, and I'm doing it all myself because I wanted to be able to not have my story altered or add more. This kid. I was born, like I said, right after my father came home from Hiroshima and Nagasaki,
Mm.
and here I am today. I'm still grateful to be kicking at 74, but I wanted to share the story because right now the world seems to be a pretty perilous situation. There's, corporate globalism. There's this, there's that. We still have wars. I mean, all of the issues and tissues that Star Trek, for instance, has addressed, and a lot of them were humorous and fun. But it's all about humanity rising. And I thought for sure at this point in history that those lessons and efforts and concerns that people like us have expressed as to what really matters, you're going to wait till the end of your ride to go, well, I guess there was more to it. So I wanted to share the life of this boy, and up until, well, I'm not going to spoil it for you. The ending is very sweet, but I was not going to do an IMDb list of my memoir of every film I've ever been in. What's next is for me to do a second book because I have notes and memories and things that have happened on various films and locations. I've been to the Amazon to work with Richard Lynch, worked with Ernest Borgnine, Cheryl Ladd. Met her one day. She was very, very sweet, Queen Latifah. So I want to mention all of those wonderful people that I have worked with over time. That's the second book. So that's actually what I'm working on now. And I hope a big publishing company go, yeah, we want that. This book that I did, they wouldn't publish it because they said, no, you got to do the whole thing. No harm, no foul. They know the business, but this is a very, very personal story. And that's why it's only this thick, and yet it's all good. And that's kind of the theme in the story, and you'll understand why. So I hope your viewers and listeners get a chance to check it out, and I hope it resonates. I hope it resonates.
Well, like I said, for the listeners, you'll find the link to the book in our show notes. And I want to thank you so much, Mr. Berryman. And when you're ready to talk about the second book, come back on and talk about it.
I certainly will. And thank you so much. I
right.
really appreciate it.
Thanks
And you know the drill.
Indeed. Live long and prosper, my.
Take care.